Remember the last time you were in complete, absolute silence. Not the momentary pause between songs in a playlist, and not the short interval while a video loads, but in real, deep silence, when there is no sound of the TV in the background, no hum of the street outside the window, no voices in your headphones. What was your first sensation? If you are like most modern people, it was most likely not peace, but a barely perceptible anxiety. An almost instinctive desire to immediately fill this silence with something. The hand itself reaches for the phone. The fingers open a news feed, a social network, turn on a podcast. We are ready to listen to anything. Other people's thoughts, meaningless chatter, music we don't even like, just not to be alone with this ringing silence. We live in a world that is panically afraid of silence. We have created an entire civilization of noise so that we never have to be alone with ourselves. We wake up to the sound of an alarm clock, have breakfast to a morning show, drive to work listening to music or an audiobook. In the office, we are surrounded by the hum of conversations and computers, and in the evening we come home and immediately turn on the TV or a series, just for background noise. We create a dense acoustic cocoon around ourselves, a white noise of existence that protects us from something that seems much more frightening to us than any external sound. We are afraid of silence. But why? Why has this simple, natural state become a source of such discomfort for us? The answer to this question goes deep into the psychology of our time. We have stopped perceiving silence as a natural pause, as a space for rest. In our consciousness, it has become synonymous with emptiness. And we fear emptiness most of all. In a culture obsessed with productivity, silence seems like wasted time. If you are silent, it means you are not doing anything. If you are not doing anything, it means you are inefficient. If you are inefficient, it means you are losing in this endless race for success. Silence has become a sign of stagnation, a pause in development, and the modern world does not tolerate pauses. But there is a deeper, more personal reason for our flight from silence. Silence is a huge, icy mirror, and in it we inevitably see ourselves, as we are, without social masks, without distracting maneuvers, without the saving grace of noise. The external hum allows us to not hear the internal hum. While the music is playing, we can avoid thinking that our relationship has long reached a dead end. While we listen to a podcast, we can ignore the quiet voice of anxiety whispering that we are not doing what we are meant to do. While we watch a series, we can fail to notice the feeling of deep loneliness that lives in our chest. External noise is an anesthetic. It helps us not to feel the pain of our unresolved problems, unlived emotions, and unspoken truths. Silence, on the contrary, removes this anesthetic. And as soon as it arrives, all those uninvited guests, from whom we have been so diligently hiding, take the stage of our consciousness. Fragments of old resentments surface. A feeling of guilt for long-committed acts arises. Anxiety about the future rises. Questions to which we have no answers emerge. Am I really happy? Have I chosen the right path? Am I not betraying my dreams? It is this encounter that we fear. We are afraid of this honest, ruthless conversation with ourselves. That is why we instinctively reach for the TV remote or the app icon on our phone. We look for any excuse to turn on the noise again and drown out this internal dialogue that threatens to disrupt the fragile balance of our habitual life. We run from silence, mistakenly believing that we are running from emptiness and boredom. But in reality, we are running from ourselves. We are running from the only point in the universe where real answers can be found. We are running from the only space where genuine healing and transformation are possible. And as long as we continue this race, we are doomed to remain on the surface, in perpetual hustle, never knowing the depth that is hidden within us. Our fear of silence is based on one deep but fundamental misconception. We mistakenly take it for emptiness, for a vacuum, for an absence of life. But what if it's the exact opposite? What if silence is not emptiness, but ultimate fullness? What if it's not the absence of something, but the presence of everything important. To understand this, we need to turn again to the wisdom of Carl Jung. He taught us that our psyche is multi-layered. On the surface is our conscious I, our ego. This is the part of us that is constantly thinking, analyzing, planning, and worrying. It is the voice of our social mask, our persona. It is constantly busy maintaining our image in the eyes of others, protecting us from criticism and meeting expectations. This voice is by its nature very loud, fussy, and anxious. It never falls silent. It is its chatter that we mistake for our inner life. But beneath this noisy, restless layer of the ego lies something completely different. Jung called it the self, our true deep I. It is the center of our personality, the source of our wisdom, intuition, and inner strength. The voice of the self, unlike the voice of the ego, does not shout. It whispers. It speaks to us not in the language of logical arguments, but in the language of sensations, images, and sudden insights. And now imagine a room where a radio is constantly playing very loudly. In the same room is a person trying to whisper something to you. Will you hear them? Of course not. The noise of the radio will drown out everything. This radio is our restless ego, and the person speaking in a whisper is our self. So, silence is not an empty room. Silence is the moment when we finally turn off this deafening radio. And only then, in the resulting stillness, do we have a chance to hear this quiet, but most important voice in the universe, our own. Therefore, silence is not a vacuum. It is a sacred space, a space for a long-awaited meeting with oneself. As long as we are in the flow of external noise, we are completely identified with our mask. We are a manager, we are a parent, we are someone's friend. We are completely absorbed in our social roles. Silence, gently but persistently, removes these masks from us. In it, we cease to be a function and remember that we simply are. This process can be compared to how sediment settles in a glass of water. Our daily life is a constant shaking. Thousands of thoughts, emotions, and impressions create mental dust inside us, which makes the water of our consciousness cloudy and opaque. We cannot see what is at the bottom. We cannot clearly discern either our true problems or our genuine desires. Silence is the act of stopping this shaking. When we remain still, this mental dust begins to slowly settle, thought by thought, emotion by emotion, and gradually the water of our consciousness becomes crystal clear. And then, for the first time, we can look into our own depth. This meeting is not always pleasant. In this crystal clarity, we can see not only treasures but also the monsters we have hidden at the bottom. Our fears, our pain, our vulnerability. This is precisely why the ego is so afraid of silence. It is afraid of losing control and facing what it has so carefully suppressed. But only by going through this encounter can we become truly whole. Only by acknowledging and accepting these shadow parts of ourselves do we gain genuine strength. The noise of the world pulls us outward. It fragments and scatters our attention, forces us to wear the persona. Silence, on the contrary, gently returns us inward to our center, to ourself. It brings us together. So the next time you find yourself in silence, do not rush to fill it. Try to treat it not as emptiness, but as an invitation to the most important meeting of your life, an invitation to the only space where you can finally come home. Because this space is not passive. It is active, it is alive. In it, the true alchemy of the soul takes place. And what is born in this silence can change your entire life. When we decide not to run away from silence, but to stay in it, we open the door to the true alchemical laboratory of our soul. Silence is not just a rest from noise. It is an active, transformative process in which three great gifts are born, capable of changing our perception of the world and ourselves. The first gift of silence is clarity. Our daily life is like driving a car during a heavy snowstorm. The windshield wipers can barely cope with the flow of snow. Visibility is almost zero. We peer intently at the road, but we only see a chaotic flurry of snowflakes. These snowflakes are our thoughts, anxieties, fears, other people's opinions, informational junk. They fly at us from all sides, creating white noise in our consciousness. In such a state, it is almost impossible to make a balanced decision. We act impulsively, react to external stimuli, try to deal with the immediate problem without seeing the whole picture. We are constantly putting out small fires, not understanding where the source of the fire is. Silence is the moment when we pull over to the side of the road and just wait for the blizzard to subside. First, it seems that nothing is happening. The snowflake thoughts are still swirling before our eyes. But gradually, if we remain still, their flow weakens. The blizzard subsides. And finally, the moment comes when the snow completely stops falling. And then we see the road that stretches far ahead. We see the landscape around. We see where we actually are. The problem that seemed huge and unsolvable to us suddenly appears in its true light, small and quite surmountable. The solution that we painfully sought for weeks suddenly comes by itself. Simple, obvious, the only right one. In this newfound clarity, we begin to see what is really happening in our lives. We see that the relationships we clung to are long dead. That the job that gave us status is actually slowly killing our soul. That the fear that paralyzed us was just an illusion, a shadow on the wall. The clarity born in silence can be ruthless, but it is always healing. It frees us from self-deception. The second gift of silence is intuition. We are used to looking for answers in the external world. We read books, consult with friends, turn to experts. We gather information, analyze, build logical chains. This is an important and necessary process, but it involves only one part of our being, our rational mind, our ego. But the most important answers to the most important questions of our lives never come from outside. They are already inside us, in the depths of our unconscious. Jung was convinced that the unconscious is not just a dump of forgotten memories and repressed desires. It is an infinitely wise ocean of collective experience, a source of creativity and the deepest insights. Intuition is the very language in which our wise unconscious speaks to us. It is not a logical conclusion, but a sudden, holistic knowledge. I just know it's true. It is a feeling that comes from nowhere and requires no proof. But to hear this quiet voice of intuition, silence is needed. As long as our mind is busy with endless analysis and internal chatter, it creates such a strong mental noise that we are simply unable to hear this subtle signal. When we immerse ourselves in silence, the mind gradually quiets down. And in this pause, in this space between thoughts, the possibility for intuitive insight arises. The answer to a question that has been tormenting you may come as a sudden image, as a metaphor, as a sensation in the body, or simply as a clear, calm knowledge. It is in silence that poems come to poets, brilliant ideas to scientists, and the wisest decisions in their lives to ordinary people. The third gift of silence is emotional resilience. We are used to thinking that managing emotions means suppressing them. When we are sad, we force ourselves to smile. When we are angry, we pretend that everything is fine. We fight with our feelings, considering them something wrong, something that prevents us from living. But a suppressed emotion does not disappear. Like a compressed spring, it accumulates tension in our body and sooner or later shoots out, in the form of a sudden outburst of anger, a psychosomatic illness, or depression. Silence offers us a completely different path. It teaches us not to fight with emotions, but to observe them. When we remain in silence, we give our feelings the space to simply be. We do not try to change them. We do not judge them as good or bad. We simply look at them with impartial curiosity, like a scientist observing a natural phenomenon. And then a miracle happens. The emotion that we look at, but do not identify with, loses its power over us, passes through us, like a cloud passes across the sky, and dissolves. By practicing this silent observation, we cease to be slaves to our feelings. We acquire an inner center, a point of calm from which we can look at any emotional storm without getting involved in it. We learn to be not a boat tossed on the waves, but a lighthouse that calmly observes the raging sea. This is true emotional resilience. It is born not from struggle, but from acceptance. And its cradle is silence. By gaining clarity, intuition, and emotional resilience in silence, we change not only our inner world. These deep changes inevitably begin to manifest externally, transforming our relationships with other people. We acquire what can be called the power of silent presence. In a world where everyone strives to outshout the other, where a person's value is often measured by their ability to speak wittily and quickly, silence becomes a rare and incredibly valuable resource. A person who is comfortable in silence begins to possess an almost magnetic attraction. Why does this happen? First, such a person's words gain weight. Imagine two people. One talks constantly. He comments on everything, fills any pause, shares every fleeting thought. His speech is a continuous stream, like the noise of a radio. Over time, we stop listening closely. His words become just background noise, losing their value due to inflation. The other person speaks rarely. He listens a lot, pauses, and when he finally utters a phrase, it sounds with special force. We instinctively fall silent and listen because we know, if this person has decided to break the silence, it means he really has something to say. Silence is the frame for your words. Just as a black velvet cloth makes a diamond shine especially brightly, so silence gives your words depth, significance, and weight. When you stop talking just to fill the void and start talking only when your words come from your inner center, from the clarity you have found in silence, people begin to hear you. Not just listen, but truly hear. Second, your silent attention becomes the greatest gift. We live in an era of a total attention deficit. During a conversation, our interlocutors look at their phones, think about their own affairs, wait for their turn to insert a remark. We are rarely given the luxury of full, undivided presence. When you learn to be in silence with yourself, you automatically learn to be in true presence with others as well. You stop fussing about what to say next that's clever. You just listen. You look at the person, absorb their words, their intonations, their nonverbal signals. Your silence tells them, I am here. I am with you. What you are saying is important to me. And this simple but rare gift creates an incredibly deep sense of connection and trust. People may not remember what you said to them, but they will forever remember the feeling of being truly seen and heard. In your calm, undemanding presence, they feel safe. They can relax and take off their own masks. Third, you cease to be reactive and become a source of calm. In any tense situation, be it a conflict at work or a difficult conversation in the family, people usually react automatically. They defend themselves, attack, justify themselves. Emotions run high, and the situation only gets more complicated. A person who practices silence acquires the ability to pause. Instead of reacting immediately to a provocation, he can simply listen in silence. This silence is not a sign of weakness or indifference. It is an act of enormous inner strength. This pause breaks the usual stimulus-response cycle. It gives time for emotions to settle down. It allows you to see the situation not through the prism of your wounded ego, but from that clear and calm point that you have found within yourself. And often, after this pause, your response will not be a reaction, but a conscious, wise action that does not add fuel to the fire, but, on the contrary, helps to resolve the conflict. In your silence, the other person, accustomed to an immediate rebuff, suddenly loses their footing. They are left alone with their own aggression, and it begins to fade. You become not a participant in the battle, but the calm space in which the battle loses its meaning. People instinctively gravitate towards such calm, like tired travelers to an oasis in the desert. Thus, the power of silent presence is not a manipulation or a technique. It is a natural consequence of your inner work. When you find peace in your own soul, you unwittingly begin to radiate this peace outward. And this changes everything. You cease to be someone who desperately seeks attention and become someone whose attention is of value. Having realized the enormous transformative power of silence, we can ask ourselves a very practical question. How can we bring it back into our lives? How can we make silence our conscious practice without going to a monastery or running away from the world? This is not about radically changing your lifestyle. It is about introducing small but regular islands of silence into it, which will gradually change its quality. It is not so much about formal meditation as about a conscious choice, a choice in favor of a pause where we are used to hustle. The first and simplest step is microdoses of silence throughout the day. You don't need to set aside an hour or even half an hour. Start with 1 to 3 minutes. Find moments that already exist in your schedule. For example, before you get out of bed in the morning, don't immediately reach for your phone. Just lie for 1 minute in silence. Feel your body, your breath. Listen to the sounds outside the window. This will set a completely different, calmer tone for your entire day. When you get in the car, before you turn on the radio or music, sit for 1 minute in silence. When you get home from work, before you dive into household chores, sit on a chair and just be still for 2 or 3 minutes. These short pauses act as a reboot for the nervous system. They break the chain of automatic, bustling actions and bring you back to the present moment. The second step is a scheduled digital detox. Our gadgets are the main source of noise in modern life. They constantly demand our attention, bombard us with information, and do not give our minds a second of rest. It is impossible to completely abandon them, but you can learn to manage them, rather than letting them manage you. Set simple rules for yourself. For example, not picking up your phone for an hour before bed. This will not only improve the quality of your sleep, but also create a precious space of silence in the evening where you can calmly reflect on the day. Or set aside 1 hour on a weekend when you turn off all notifications and put your phone in another room. During this time, you can read a paper book, engage in a hobby, or simply do nothing. The third step is mindful walks in silence. A walk can be not just a way to get from point A to point B, but also a powerful practice of returning to yourself. Try to go for a walk alone and without headphones at least once a week. It doesn't matter where it will be. In a park, on the quiet streets of your city, or even just around your house. The goal of such a walk is not to think, but to perceive. Pay attention to what surrounds you, the color of the sky, the shape of the clouds, the rustle of leaves under your feet, the faces of passers-by. Shift your attention from internal dialogue to external sensations. Such a practice pulls you out of the captivity of anxious thoughts and grounds you, returning you to the reality of here and now. The fourth step is to find your place of silence. This can be any place where you feel calm and protected. A cozy armchair by the window in your apartment, a bench in a remote corner of a park, a quiet hall in a museum or library. It is important that it is your personal space, not connected with work or fuss. Come to this place when you feel that the mental noise is becoming unbearable. Not to solve problems, but just to be, to breathe, to reconnect with your inner center. The very existence of such an anchor in your life will give you a sense of stability and control. The fifth step is to practice silence in communication. This is perhaps the most subtle and advanced level. Try not to rush to answer in a conversation with a loved one. When they finish speaking, take a short pause. Just look at them, allowing their words to settle inside you. You will be surprised at how much deeper and more meaningful your communication will become. Or when you feel a strong emotion, anger, resentment, do not rush to vent it. Tell yourself, I will be silent for 10 minutes before I say anything. In these 10 minutes, the heat of the moment will subside, and your response will most likely not be a destructive reaction, but a considered and constructive action. Bringing silence back into life is not another item on your to-do list. It is an act of love and care for yourself. It is a recognition that silence is as necessary for the health of your soul as air is for your body. Starting with these small steps, you will gradually weave silence into the fabric of your life. And one day you will notice that you are no longer afraid of it. On the contrary, you will begin to value it as the greatest luxury and the most powerful source of your inner strength. We have traveled this path from flight to acceptance. We have seen that behind our fear of silence lies the fear of meeting ourselves. We have understood that silence is not emptiness, but a space filled to the brim with potential. The potential for clarity, intuition, and unshakable inner strength. We have learned how this inner silence changes our relationship with the world, giving weight to our words and turning our attention into a priceless gift. In a world that shouts that you need to be louder to be noticed, that you need to be faster to succeed, that you need to be constantly connected so as not to be left alone, the greatest wisdom and the greatest courage lie in doing the opposite. To stop, to be silent, to listen. Noise is a sign of shallowness. A turbulent, chattering stream rattles on every stone precisely because it is not deep. Great rivers and deep lakes hold their power in silence. So it is with a person. Bustle, verbosity, a constant need for noise. These are often signs of inner anxiety and a lack of depth. True strength is always calm. It does not need to prove itself by shouting. The path to oneself, the very process of individuation that Carl Jung spoke of, is not a sprint in a noisy stadium to the applause of the crowd. It is a quiet, solitary pilgrimage to the center of one's own soul. And the main temple on this path is the temple of silence. There is no one in it but you, and in it is everything you have ever needed. So do not be afraid of silence. Do not perceive it as an enemy or as emptiness. Treat it as a wise teacher, as a kind healer. Let it enter your life, first for a minute, then for 10, then for an hour. Let it wash away all the mental dust from you, calm the storm of your emotions, and show you the way. Ask yourself the next time your hand reaches for a source of noise, what am I really running from? What important conversation with myself am I trying to drown out? What truth am I afraid to hear in the resulting silence? Perhaps it is in this truth that your real freedom is hidden, your real strength, your real life,